Hello adventurers! My name is Benny from Boardgame Raccoon, and in this series of short videos I want to give you a little taste of what awaits you in the second part of our solo game series Between Light and Shadow. So join me in this video as we travel through the desert, visiting fantastic locations and embarking on adventures along the way. Before we start, just a quick note. This is an early prototype. There will be changes, and as we are changing the cards every day for balancing reasons, this is just the home printed and quickly cutted German version. But it should be enough to give you a first impression. So let's talk about adventures. The second chapter of Between Light and Shadow will take you to the desert, where you will explore fantastic cities, dangerous routes, and mysterious dungeons. I've already taught you a bit about the dungeons in another video, so this time it's all about traveling through the desert and the places you can visit. Here we also have completely new exciting mechanics for you. The second chapter is completely location based. This means that your character will always be in one of the locations on our map here. You will not visit all locations in every scenario, and what awaits you in the locations will also differ. In the course of a campaign, locations may even be added, but more on that later. Once you are in a location, let's say Stonegate here, you take all the location cards available to you and lay them out. These are the things you can discover in these locations or that can happen to you. But how exactly do these location cards work? Location cards are always structured in the same way. At the top, we see the location to which the card refers. As we are currently in Stonegate, we take all available cards with the Stonegate location symbol and place them face up in front of us. Each card also has a card number and a scenario indicator, so that we can set up the scenarios correctly. Below this, however, is the important part. On each card, we'll find the name of the card and one or two actions. These actions always consist of a number of die boxes, followed by a text describing the action, then followed by the game effects if you perform the action. Here in Stonegate, for example, we can visit the Pilgrims of the Order of Light. There are two actions. We can ask the pilgrims for directions, or we can get a blessing. A blessing never hurts, so let's do this action once. You can see the two white die boxes here. This means that we need to place two white dice on this card to perform the action. These two dice must also have a value of at least 5. As soon as all the boxes of an action are filled with dice, we perform the action. In general, we can always place a die from our active dice area here next to our map on matching dice boxes of active location cards. As we want a blessing, let's place this 5 here on the first space of the location card. Then place this 6 on the other space. This fills all the boxes for the action. Now we place the dice from the card here in our used dice area so they are no longer available to us. And then carry out the action. So we would perform the game effect below. In this case, we would receive a certain resource, in this case, determination. This completes the action and we can continue exploring the city. Of course, there are even more complex dice rolls. Here, for example, we can buy water, but the price depends on the value of the black die. There are also some special location cards, which have certain conditions, or which must be dealt with first, and much more. But in principle, actions are always structured in this way. However, if we now want to continue exploring Stonegate, we have a problem. We no longer have any active dice. So it's time to look at activations and powers. We have seen how we can perform actions with our dice. These dice represent something like our endurance over the course of a day. We can't always mobilize all our energy, and if we do, we will be exhausted. This is represented in the game by a dice cycle with several areas. As you can see, we have 3 areas next to our map where our dice can be placed. In the available dice area are all the dice that we can place on dice spaces to perform actions. After the action, these dice are placed in the used dice area. We cannot use them at the moment. Finally, there is the dice pool. Although these dice have not yet been used, they are not yet available, so we have to activate them first. Next to these cards, you can see 2 types of cards: activations and powers. Activations allow us to move dice from the dice supply to the available dice area. Of course, activations are always linked to certain conditions, which differ from scenario to scenario or according to the path you have chosen. A character on the shadow side, for example, will find it much easier to activate shadow dice. In this example, we can use the with light and shadow ability to activate a white die and a black die. We can turn both to any value, but both must be turned to the same value. The other activation would allow us to act decisively. We would lose a determination resource and could activate any 2 dice with any value in return. As we can see, there are various activations that are completely different and will give us a lot to think about. What all activations have in common, however, is that we no longer have to roll dice. We are therefore always free to decide which dice we activate with which values. The second type of card, which is laid out in a row here, are powers. These allow us to interact with our available and used dice in a variety of ways, including returning used dice to the dice pool. Some of these cards also have die boxes on which we can place available dice to do something, others we can do directly. There's also a variety of scenario-dependent possibilities here. We can take a short rest and make low dice available again. We can place a die here, for example, to make plans, or we can camp here for the night and put all the dice back to our dice pool. Also, we lose energy depending on how high the values of the unused dice are. So, our dice move from the pool to available through activations, where we can use them for powers or actions in locations, which put them to used, from where we can put them back into the pool through powers. So you see, there are no fixed turns, but our dice are in a constant flow and we make decisions the whole game about how we want to use our dice to do things in the various locations. But let's illustrate this with an example. We are still in Stonegate, but now it's time to discover new locations. To do this, we first need to know the routes through the desert. We had the opportunity to ask the pilgrims of the Order of Light for directions, so let's give it a try. If we look at the location card again, we can see that the action requires any white die. So let's use one of our activations to activate a white die with a value of 1. In our example, we also need to activate a black die with the same value. So we now have a white and a black 1 available. Now we place the white 1 on the location card, which completely fills the bar and activates the action. So we place the white die in the used area and carry out the game effect. Here you can see some symbols. Let's start with the second symbol. This means that the card is flipped over and remains on its back from now on, giving us new choices. Location cards that are flipped over remain on the new side and always gives you new action options. You can also see 2 cities here that are connected by a straight line. This is the path that the pilgrims described to us. We draw a line on our map between the 2 cities and can now travel back and forth between the 2 locations. But how do we get to the new city? To travel to other locations, we always need a route and a transport method. Routes are the lines drawn on our map, which we can unlock via actions in locations. Transportation is represented in the game by transportation cards, which work in exactly the same way as location cards. That is, they always have a die box bar with certain conditions and are placed here as soon as you own the transportation. There is a direct link between the types of routes and certain forms of transportation. Simple routes, represented by a normal line, can be traveled with all means of transport. However, there can also be other types of routes. Some long routes require a mount or a sand glider, while others even require a flying machine. These routes are represented by dotted lines, for example. The means of transport also have different requirements. Some depend on the current wind value, others require many dice or are difficult to obtain. So there is a lot to discover and consider with transportation too. But back to our example, let's now travel along our newly discovered route. We can go on foot as our transport card allow us to travel on solid lines, and we need any 2 dice, which together must be greater than the current wind of the desert value. We can put down our black 1 here. The wind is currently 3, so we activate another black and white 3. And place one of them on our transportation card. The row is filled, so we place our dice, carry out the action and travel along the line. So we have arrived in the new city. Now we have to put all the location cards of the old location aside, as we can no longer do anything there. And reveal all the location cards of the new location. In addition, a number of random encounters is always drawn if you enter a new location. As we are in a large city, as we can see here, 2 cards are always drawn from the random pile. This pile contains different cards depending on the scenario and the course of the campaign. But these cards usually give you nice additional options. Here, for example, we have the opportunity to earn some money with odd jobs or to buy some food from a traveling merchant. Now we can look around the new location and see what actions we can take. However, we only have 1 black die available, so it would probably be a good idea to use the night camp ability first. Here we get all our dice back into the dice pool. We lose energy depending on the values of our unused dice, but now we have all our dice available to activate again, and we can look around the town and maybe earn some money or ask for new routes or advance in our quest. Of course, there's a lot more to discover. For example, we can bring a completely new card into play here because of this symbol by picking the number from our exploration pile. This would, for example, allow us to perform new actions in different locations as we get new informations. We can unlock new activations and abilities with experience gains, or activate new riddle cards or find clues to solve them. But for now, you know how to travel through the desert and perform actions in locations. More on everything else in the next video. Until then, stay adventurous!